I would like to welcome a comrade. Uh, I would like to welcome him to ask or give any submission. Comrade LM Prezo, you're welcome.
All right, thank you very much. And thank you very much, Julius, for your submission. I associate myself to everything that you said. Analyzing and making a forensic diagnosis of um, the person that you're trying to fight against, you go into the pillars that holds him, like you rightly said. Now, um, economic non-cooperation has different phases. If you happen to have read the um, the Citizen's Handbook, it has different phases of what you can do, and you've mentioned those things that we can do to do that economic non-cooperation. But at the same time, we have different players. In order for an economic non-cooperation to succeed, all these players, the consumers, the workers and producers, the middlemen, the owners and management, the owners of the financial resource, as you put it. When you look at Uganda, the heart of the economy is hinged on banks. These banks in Uganda are owned by foreigners, apart from the few. And that's where the major issue that you might be having. Because once the banking sector is held by the international investors, then they can hike and increase interest rates basing on who is coming to get a loan from them. Now, if government, through domestic borrowing, goes to the same financial institution like an ordinary person goes, a domestic worker, then these banks will end up increasing that interest rate because they'll be competing. The ordinary person will be competing with the government because the government will also be borrowing from the same banks. Now, collecting data in your efforts to or your plans to implement certain activity under the economic non-cooperation. To paint a picture of Uganda, most of the revenue is collected within the center. That is within the central business district. Kampala, Wakiso, Mukono, and the surrounding area. When you go outside Kampala and these surrounding areas, there's less revenue taxes that comes from those ends. So now you look at what kind of people contribute more taxes, because the government cannot operate without taxes, without revenue. When you look at these trading associations such as Casita and others, those for transport, the farmers, uh, and other traders that contribute to the both direct and indirect taxes through the Uganda Revenue Authority and um, the local government. So when you look at those associations of Casita and the associations of the transport bodies, the farmers' bodies, most of the times you find like these guys have gone on a strike, and those strikes have made the government to come and sit with them on a round table because they chose to close their shops. They did not go on the street, but they just chose to close their shops, which means government will be losing billions of money, and that affects the the national budget because all the money collected goes into consolidation fund. That's where the government gets the money. When the money is collected by the revenue authority, it goes into the consolidation fund, and then it will be distributed or allocated to different departments. Now, for this to succeed, we must look at the players, the consumers, the producers, the workers. What actions must they do to play their part? Is it through the strikes, like consumers boycotts, or non-consumption of certain goods and use of certain services? Are they withholding the rent? Because the Uganda Revenue Authority also gets charges a rent or a tax on rent, on property tax. So if people are not paying and they are withholding, that means these properties will not be occupied. Therefore, the government will not be getting money. And if a property is not used, then the government will not be collecting that money because it's not occupied. So people can choose, the consumers can choose to withhold their rent or refuse to rent at all. These buildings will stay empty and there will be no one to rent them. Therefore, the government will not be able to do that. Or people can choose to have a national consumers boycott or boycott certain products owned or produced by international bodies or enterprises. They can choose to boycott them. If they find out that the consumption of those products and use of those services is going to continue giving that money to the dictator. Now, when you look at when Uganda, through the means of finance, read the national budget of a particular uh, financial year, every department is allocated a certain uh, percentage from the the national budget. So out of the 48 trillion, every sector of government is going to get its share. But the office of the president has always come up with supplementary budgets, and it will put it under classified expenditure, and that money goes. So how do we stop the government collecting this money from the traders, engaging with these contributors, the casitas, the farmers association groups, those farmers? How do we engage with them? Because when you look at the economy, it's an agricultural economy. It's pre-industrial. It's not really so much into industry. Uganda is majorly an agricultural economy. So when the farmers cannot transport, choose to boycott transporting or producing those uh, produces from different parts of the country to bring them to the center to sell them, then government will not be able to collect. But what will make them do that, boycott that, is either government increasing on the taxes they charge on either fuel to balance or to cover up the gap of the projected revenue collected. Because if government is not is to collect, let's say, the budget of 48 trillion, 45%, I mean 55% is going to be collected within, and then the 45% will be donations and grants from donors. If the revenue collected is in deficit and people are not paid, like the employees, the government employees, civil servants are not paid for a long time, they'll go on a strike. If doctors are not paid, they'll go on a strike. But as long as government can still get money to pay up those guys, the so-called elites, the military, and these other ordinary people that feed from the government apologists, the dictators' apologists, they're ordinary people, peasants, but they get handouts from the government. That's why the dictator is paying people to support him. So he's buying support. So putting or holding boycott strikes, it can be a full strike or boycott, but engaging these traders association that contribute so much money collected is very important. Either speaking with them, getting to know what can push them to hold a boycott or a strike is very important. So collecting data and knowing the pillars that holds the center of a dictator is very, very, very important in our agenda to really have an economic non-cooperation. For it to succeed, one, we need to know who are the players. Okay, like I said, the consumers, the workers and producers, owners and managers of certain traders association, like I said, the farmers association, where they can choose to refuse to sell properties or offer services, or they can have lockouts, they can have industrial strikes. Doctors, when they don't get paid, they will stage strikes. Uh, the holders of financial resources, where people decide not to deposit money into the bank because the bank makes money when they lend out that money and charge interest on that money, or invest in properties um, for a short while. So if people don't deposit money into the bank, then the bank will not have money to use to rent out. They can refuse to pay school fees for their children or dues. Okay, they can choose to not to pay debts. They withhold their debts or interest. So these boycotts are very, very, very important. I submit.
Yeah, thank you so much, Comrade LM Prezo, for that great submission. Comrade Awadi is back here with us. I would like to straight go to him.
Thank you, co-host, for bringing me back on board. Yeah, I'm sorry I'm again having those. I wouldn't say they are usual, but I've experienced some kind of technical glitch. But now that I'm on board, let me try to run a bit fast. Maybe those guys will again disorganize me. My point was that we need to actually uh, make this discussion into actionable sort of discussion. How? I'm saying that we should make it actionable in a way that we try to just discussion. We try to bring forward whatever was suggested by one of the prominent presidents by terms of agro change, the Australian best ideologies, Ugandan, Australian.
Sorry, Comrade Wadi, we lost you again. Um, as you reconnect, I would like to pose a question to Comrade Julius. What are some of the threats and weaknesses the oppressor has got, and we activists can take advantage to consolidate our power against the oppressor?
Thank you very much again. Uh, there's something that Prezo has mentioned, and that already is a pillar that already is identified. Uh, he mentioned banks. Banks do a lot of banks do pay a lot of taxes to government. It pays a lot of taxes to government. So yeah, it's already as you were saying, we were trying to identify. Already has identified banks. And so when you was one of the pillars that keeps the oppressor on top. So we need also to know the weaknesses of the oppressor. The way I said earlier that oppressor is just like a crocodile. At the back it's very strong, but yet at the belly side is weak. You can even cut it with a laser blade. It's very weak. Oppressor is also very weak. He has a very soft belly. So soft belly is when we do economic and cooperation. Economic and cooperation is the soft belly of an oppressor. So what Comrade Prezzo has mentioned about the bank, the banks, especially international banks, I can give an example here in Kenya because people daily are practicing economic and cooperation against the multinational banks. Uh, women, women, especially women are doing what we call here in Kenya, they call it a merry-go-round or table banking. They don't believe in putting money in banks. You see, every Saturday they meet with their groups. They give one person money. Even banks are not don't like those kind of things because it interferes with their operation, the way they operate. So they always go to those women and tell them, no, what you should do, you should bring this money and put it in the banks. But women are saying, no, we are very okay. We don't need any interest. What we are doing is just every weekend you collect money and you give it to one individual. So you find that money is just circulating among the women. It's not going through a banking system. So if we can identify, you know, let's say maybe it's Chart, maybe it is a backless bank that is supporting this person. So we start a campaign. We're saying that is the backless bank or is this Chart that is supporting an oppressor. So we've decided that we will not deposit our money in this bank. That's the way you can do economic and cooperation because these are the pillars that hold the oppressor. So economic and cooperation is the weakest side, is the weakest side of an oppressor. That's the weakest. It is the soft belly of a crocodile or a snake. So that's what I can say about. I can say about. I can say about the weak side of an oppressor. The weaker side of an oppressor, apart from any other things, the weakest side of an oppressor is economic and cooperation. And the economic cooperation is not easy to know unless we train our communities, we train them. This is the way it's supposed to be done. This is the way it operates. That our country is not the state the way you're feeling like. People might think that when you're going to election, when you're electing our leaders, that there's something good that you are doing. No, that first of all they need to understand what is statecraft. How does the state operate? How does the state operate? So by knowing that, we will know the weakness side of it. You'll not know the weakness side of it unless you do more research, you go into it and you know the way states operate. Because even you see this when we have these ambassadors, high commissioners of other country. When they come to this country, mostly they usually come for economic purpose, not for anything other things else. To come and safeguard their multinationals. So those are the things that we know, not only about those multinationals itself, even ambassadors. When they have these launches, you're going to hotels that those ambassadors, they're here to keep the interest of their multinational from their countries. Like for example, in Uganda, uh, you realize that every time, because most of flower companies are being owned by the Dutch, you realize the embassy of Netherlands are hosting businessmen from Netherlands. UK are holding businessmen from UK, Germany, and such kind of things. So you realize that these ambassadors also are representing the interest of those multinationals, and those are things that we're supposed to know. So when you see that ambassadors are meeting the president, they're not meeting the president because of the mutual interest of their countries. They're meeting the presidents to safeguard the interest of their multinationals in this country. So immediately start such kind of organized economic and cooperation. It will affect even the ambassadors. And you see, the ambassador, it will force the ambassador to go and talk with the president. There's something wrong that's going on. Because what most people don't know, even though we usually work with the ambassadors, those people are intelligence. They usually come with us and to understand what our thinking here. Because when if anytime you have worked with the NGO, have you realized that most of the time when you are being told write a proposal, they don't care about the amount of money that you are requesting. What they'll ask is that they'll ask, what are the objective of this campaign that you want to do? What are their target? Because anytime they'll see that in your proposal, your campaign, you are targeting their companies that come from the country, they'll not fund you. So those are the things. Even if you're asking for funding from these ambassadors from, you have to know that they always represent the interest of their multinationals. So when you see the ambassadors are here, they represent the interest of the multinationals in the country. So, like for example, why is it that High Commission of UK is so strong in Uganda? Why is it that ambassadorial of US is so strong in Uganda? It's because their multinationals are there. Total is there. Shell is there. So when we're doing these campaigns, we're not to do something about this. Say for example, we boycott Total, or we boycott Shell, or we boycott a certain hotel, or we boycott certain agricultural company. That ambassador will come in and will have a time with the president. Tell the president there's something wrong going on. So there are so many weaknesses. There are so many. If we do a campaign, if we have a kind of a good strategy, because in these things we need also to involve the ambassadors, because the ambassadors are playing a very good role. Ambassadors are not here to do anything else. They're here to safeguard the interest of their multinationals. So, like for example, if it's Barclays, Barclays is for, I don't know whether it's UK, Standard Chartered, I don't know from which country. So if we start to say that we will no longer deposit our money in the Barclays Bank, I'm telling you, tomorrow morning you will see the ambassador of that country meeting the president and say, why is this thing happening? Go and solve this issue. Maybe because of pressure. People are saying because of this and this. That's the reason why they don't want to deposit their money in Barclays Bank or Standard Chartered. And I like what President said, that we need to identify. This issue of just beating about the bush, we need to start to identify. Because, for example, I've started with the banks, and with the banks now, we have identified that one pillar as a bank. We need to peel that pillar. We need to peel it off like the way you usually we peel an onion. Because you realize that there are so many banks in Uganda. You see, when we are doing an cooperation, it doesn't mean that there must be an alternative. Is there indigenous bank in Uganda that we can deposit our money apart from these multinationals that are supporting an oppressor? So those are the things that we need to know, identifying, and it's very good that President has identified banks. So it's upon our duty now to peel off that pillar and which specific banks. And if you are saying that we are boycotting this bank, do we have an alternative bank where you can deposit our money? I think that's the only way. So the soft belly of a bank that can cut with a laser blade, that you can cut a crocodile with a laser blade, is economic non-cooperation. That's the weakest side of these other things, leave alone, because economic non-cooperation is a very, very, very powerful tool of civil resistance. Apart from this, all other the political one, they can do something they want with it. But economic non-cooperation is it usually gives the government a sleepless night. So the weakest point of a government is